And basically, again, this should be technical support. I don't think it's a long-term support, but in the very least, I do expect a bump here in Bitcoin. Again, if you zoom out on the chart here, you can see very clearly this was a major, this was a cycle pivot high going back to
Yep.
2017. So
Hello, and welcome back to the Daily Crypto. Today, we have Gareth Soloway as he tells us his predictions for the Bitcoin industry come 2023, and why he expects Bitcoin prices to continue falling till it reaches the 12,000 benchmark, following a brief bounce in the $20,000 range. Gareth Soloway went on to explain, using charts and technical analysis, that 20,000 represents Bitcoin's short-term price floor, with a rebound to 25,000 to 30,000 expected in the coming weeks. Some forecasters have already called the bottom, predicting that prices would climb following the weekend's drop, but that is overly hopeful. Others are more cautious, arguing that we cannot assume the worst is over until inflation declines. Simply put, investors' concerns are totally rational in the near run. Not only has the value of our portfolios been crushed, but prices might fall even further. Without further ado, let's get right at Gareth Soloway's Bitcoin price forecast. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you love the content we provide on this channel.
And basically, again, this should be technical support. I don't think it's a long-term support, but in the very least, I do expect a bump here in Bitcoin. Again, if you zoom out on the chart here, you can see very clearly this was a major, this was a cycle pivot high going back to 2017. So it would be very surprising. The way technicals work, usually these major pivot highs give a sustainable bounce for at least a month or two in a bear cycle before they break significantly lower. Now, we obviously know what's going on with Celsius, and we saw Terra Luna. So there are dominoes that are falling. It's very reminiscent to the dot-com bubble bursting, which to me tells me there's still more downside to come eventually. But in the near term, I think a move back really right in this area here to 25 and change, that would be a very reasonable target in the near term. That's that pivot low from the Terra Luna UST collapse. And then if we get a little bit through that, then you would start hitting major resistance around 28.5, 28.6 on Bitcoin. I would be somewhat surprised if we get through the second line here, considering everything that's going on. And again, we have to remember that you still have the Fed tightening. They're not going to start printing at least till the end of the year. I know that's even, hard to imagine that they go back to that, but I do think that the economy will get in a position where they probably will have to again, maybe late this year or next year. And then that's probably where you find a bottom.
Gareth Soloway believes Bitcoin will fall below 12,000 and even 10,000 after bouncing off 20,000 this week. If his prediction comes true, BTC will be at its lowest valuation in over 2 years. Long-term investors, on the other hand, should not be concerned about such a slump. Soloway believes that this will boost the market and clean out all the weak crap. He also claimed to be a hodler, having entered the ecosystem when BTC was approximately 19K. According to Gareth Soloway, Bitcoin should be considered a new asset that is still developing, thus investors can expect a regular price movement. On Saturday, Bitcoin plummeted to its lowest price since 2020 at $17,660. Bitcoin had been in the midst of a correction in the weeks leading up to the sell-off, which was the sharpest of the year. Bitcoin has dropped 14% since its all-time high of $67,500, plummeting 13% from top to bottom on Saturday alone. The current bear market in Bitcoin is the most severe since 2018. Bitcoin dropped 83% last year when the Federal Reserve hiked interest rates 4 quarters in a row. Identical occurrences are unfolding this year. Central banks raised interest rates more aggressively in 2022 than they did in 2018. The massive crypto catastrophe is part of a broader market decline caused by high inflation, increasing interest rates, the Ukraine crisis, COVID lockdowns, and supply chain turmoil.
If we take a look at the NASDAQ, we can clearly see that we're still in the upper range of this longer term. And I'm going to even go to the weekly chart. Check this out. This is a longer term going back to 1999, the tech bubble top, this channel. And you could see how for many, many years we were kind of hovering in this lower range here. And then we had this meteoric rise all the way to the high end. And we have pulled back, but you're not even close to being back to that low end just yet. And again, if you look at it in the very least, I personally anticipate that the NASDAQ 100 at least has to test the pre-COVID highs right here at around 9,600 or so. So that still leaves quite a bit of downside in the NASDAQ. And if that NASDAQ is going to go there, it's to me at this stage of Bitcoin's lifespan, it's unfathomable for it to not see another leg down based on the NASDAQ collapsing even more. And again, we're talking now another 15+%, maybe 20% downside in the NASDAQ from here, which puts us down north of 50% on the overall index.
The Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 75 basis points this week, the greatest rise since 1994. All assets were withdrawn as a result of the adjustment. The S&P 500 is likewise in a bear market, having had its worst week since 2020. Gareth Soloway stated that the present context of rising inflation and interest rate rises made predicting the cryptocurrency's downside difficult. According to him, if Bitcoin sustains its price over $20,000, it will attract more bulls, pushing it to another all-time high. According to the analyst, keeping the price over $20,000 will likely provide a widespread market perception of Bitcoin's new bottom.
When you get to max pain, people don't even want to talk about it. They just kind of throw up their hands in kind of giving in, defeat, right? And you still see, when we get at this 20,000 level, people are still like, oh, I'm going to buy more. It's going to go back to all-time highs in no time at all. That mentality shows you a lot. And that tells you you're not at that bottom yet. So again, is it going to be 12,000? Is it going to be lower than that? The only kind of caveat, and again, I've been kind of riding this 20 was my high end, 12 is my low end. But one of the things that makes me a little nervous is that if this is the .com moment for cryptocurrency, then I go to Amazon's chart in 2000, right? And what's interesting about that is it's the exact same pattern on Amazon. You have the same MTOP that you have on Bitcoin at this point. And Amazon went from $112 down to about $7 to $6. It's about a 95% drop, right? So you have to think in those terms. A good trader is always going to think about all angles and try to be as prepared as possible no matter what occurs. So I'm in agreement with you. I think that you will see inflation start to come in. We've already seen oil coming in sharply. That will eventually filter out. Also, natural gas has been tumbling as well. But I don't think Bitcoin is near that max pain, not yet.
Soloway disputed the concept that Bitcoin may return to zero, emphasizing that the token's long-term prospects are favorable, despite the fact that the next 6 months would be difficult. After months of sideways trade, Soloway predicted that Bitcoin would take at least 2 years to reach 65,000. He claimed that if inflation falls, the Federal Reserve would most likely issue more money favoring Bitcoin.
Yeah, so longer term, I'm hugely bullish on Bitcoin. I continue to be. I'm less bullish on a lot of the altcoins for reasons that you've mentioned here, which is, again, what use case do they have? Is it a use case that makes them a security, or is it a commodity, or what? And we know that regulation is at some point going to differentiate. And then what does that mean for them? I think Ethereum survives. There's so much built on Ethereum at this point. But we have to be, as investors, I'm very much focusing on Bitcoin and Ethereum as my top holdings in the next cycle. Just because, again, I don't have clarity on a lot of these rules and regulations that inevitably are going to come. And in all fairness, I do want some.
Recognizing the popularity of cryptocurrencies and their potential to upset traditional banking, President Biden signed a presidential order authorizing the federal government to draft measures to regulate cryptocurrencies months ago. The order, which took months to develop, is an attempt by a financial regulator to better grasp the dangers and potentials of digital assets, particularly in the areas of consumer protection, national security, and unlawful funding.
How much of that? So if you look at the chart, right, from 99 to 2000, we were here, and then here was your 2007 or 2009 lows, and then we kind of got on this slow check. Now, remember what happened in 2009. The Fed began the quantitative easing, right? It was QE1, QE2, QE2.5, and all the way up. So the question that has to be asked is, what's the real value of the overall market when there's no Fed backstopping, no Fed stimulus? And you have to think that in the very least, yes, we probably would be higher than we were back then, but I can't imagine that it's not lower than we currently are, considering you are seeing the Fed suck out all this liquidity from the market. So I think that's the question is, do we get a recession, and how deep of a recession it is? How much of an earnings recession do we get? All these kind of questions have to make you wonder where the true fair value of the NASDAQ is. And then obviously that translates into moves in cryptocurrency where the fair value is before Bitcoin matures into kind of an offsetting, kind of a safety trade.
While new regulations may provide greater stability to the cryptocurrency industry, it remains a highly volatile and speculative instrument. That is why most financial experts advised most investors to limit their crypto holdings to less than 5% of their portfolios, and to never invest in crypto at the price of preparing for emergencies or paying off high-interest debt. Do you believe we'll see an upside price of 25,000 in the future weeks, given the long-term rise? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. This is The Daily Crypto. We'll see you in the next video.